Okay, yeah, cool. Is that better? All right. I love tech. Yeah. So, so anyway, yeah. So we had this idea and we thought, okay, great. Let's try and raise a venture fund. How the heck do you do that? That's not easy. But as of today, since we launched in 2015, we've invested in 16 companies. Those companies are all in the enterprise SaaS technology sector, so mostly frontier technology, companies pushing the boundaries of tech. Those companies have now generated over 180 full-time jobs, which is something that venture capital never talks about, is the amount of job creation that we create. And I think that's very important. We have also, our companies, which is a key thing that we'll talk about in a minute, is about revenue, is that when we invested in those companies collectively, they were generating about just under $2 million in revenue. Today, they've just hit, they've gone over 9 now. So we're investing in companies that are producing money. Here's another little stat that a lot of venture funds don't talk about or want to talk about but can't. We invest heavily. A third of our portfolio is run by women founders. Not by design, not by choice. We've just found that the best companies for us to invest in were run by women. Another third is proudly run by veterans as well. We've seen a great correlation with veteran founders and hustle and process and rigidity, and we love that. Another little number is that almost 50% of our portfolio is founded by people of color, and 50% of them are immigrants. I'm one of them. So we're extremely proud. Some of the companies we funded a company over here called Verisim Life, which is using machine learning and artificial intelligence to eliminate the need for animals to be used in the drug testing process. So they're building virtual chimpanzees that you can trial a new flu vaccine with, and it's all just a code, and nothing gets hurt anymore, and the accuracy of that testing is actually 80% versus 40% of using live animals. Another one of our companies, Spider Tech, is a law enforcement software company that is rebuilding trust between communities and the police, and the rest I'll go into in a minute. In terms of where they're spread out, well, we've been a lot of small funds often start within their backyard, which makes sense. You want to be close, you can drive to their office and keep an eye on the entrepreneurs and kick their butts occasionally. We decided to bite off a little bit more than what we can chew. So we've invested about just over half of our portfolio in Los Angeles and within Southern California. We have found a really interesting pocket of talent within Central California, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara. We've invested in San Francisco, as you can imagine. For a venture fund, investing in San Francisco is really hard because it's so well served by venture capital that if you see a deal from SF, the natural inclination for me is to say, well, already 2,000 funds have already seen this and said no, so why am I seeing it? So we take a really careful line. We're looking at SF deals, but these are deals that have crushed it. Pi, founded by 2 British entrepreneurs, yes, was sold to Snap last year in December. So we had one early exit within our fund, which was wonderful news. And then we've just funded a company in Seattle called Sound Commerce. Our latest investment that you cannot take out of this room because we've not done the press release yet is Balto Software. They're based in St. Louis, Missouri. We have another company in Monterrey, Mexico. This was a really interesting market for us. Monterrey has a school called El Tec, which is basically the MIT of Mexico. And we found an entrepreneur there that was just crushing it with machine learning. So we funded them. And then we have another company from Israel. If you know, Israel is a major hotbed of talent. Our founders were 2 very high-ranking IDF members and have created a very cool piece of software that I'll tell you about offline, but it's super cool. So how do venture capital works? How many of you know how a venture fund works? Like mechanics? Yeah. All right, good. So there's 2 main entities in the venture fund. The first one is the limited partnership. This is really key for us. This is where, and we have a management company as well. The limited partnership is where our investors' money goes into. So we don't own that money. We can't really touch it unless we're going to be investing it. It sits there in a bank account that we have very, controlled access to. Now, our investors, for those of you who don't know, are probably the same people that you're raising money from. So we have we have other VC general partners like myself as investors. We have celebrities, we have athletes, we have fund of funds, we have some endowments. So we're raising from the same people that you are. So when Mike was saying about that, that's exactly the same point. Thing is, we're raising from people with them hoping that we're smart. You know, that really is, there's not much else I can offer anybody, right? You know, I'm not making widgets, not making robots, not building drone defense, and not selling police software. I am basically saying that, you know what, I'm going to find deals better than anybody else, and they're going to be, and those are deals that are going to return massive exits. So these are the bread and butter of our business. Now, the way it works is we take their cash, which they've given to us, and we have carte blanche to invest it into startups, and then we make a decision. Now, what that means is that last year, for example, we saw 1,400 portfolio companies last year, or 1,400 potential portfolio companies. We invested in 9, so the averages are quite slim in terms of getting money from us, but so it should be. And what that means is that we invest in those companies. They're all owned by the limited partnership. When one of those companies sells, that creates something called a distribution. So that is the profit from that sale. We give that back to our investors, which is why they invest in us. And then we take 20% of that as something which is called carried interest. That's our profit. And that's what makes it interesting for us and potentially, hopefully, very lucrative. Now, in terms of how the interaction, there's another way that we make money, which is very slim. And these are called management fees. These are fees that pay for our travel, pay for our accommodation, pay for us to sponsor events, pay for us to drive out to here, stuff like that. It's not money that we get rich on. That's typically 2% of how much money we raise entirely in here. That's the management fee. In exchange for that, we give it management services. So that's kind of how the venture capital model works and what it means. Now tonight I want to kind of talk, I've covered a bit about how the venture model is, but what I want to now talk about is how we assess deals, what we look for. And I always think about us having 2 sets of 3 questions, and there's 2 buckets. The first bucket that we're going to talk about tonight is about the 10,000 feet view. What are we looking at from a highly strategic level to say yes to a company? And we'll go into that first. For those of you who are students here, you need to be reading about Professor Georges Doriot, who is a French-American father of venture capital. I'm not going to read it out to you, but this is one of his most popular and famous lines within his texts was this. And there are many things you can pull out from this, but the way we look at deals really capitalizes upon one of them, which is the study of people. When you're investing at the seed stage, we're a seed stage investor. We're investing in you as individuals and your ability to be able to fulfill your vision and ultimately create an exit for us. So, students, make sure you take a note of that, because this is a really good book. I think I can't remember the exact title, but you can email me and I'll certainly give it to you. So the question of it's a study of people, to me means why you? Why are you the right person to build this business? Why are you the right person for me to invest in? This gentleman here is a guy called Rahul Sidhu. He is the founder of SpiderTech, which is one of our companies we invested in. So Rahul came from a very unusual background that most entrepreneurs don't have. He was a LAPD officer. He went through police academy with his co-founder of SpiderTech, and they both saw firsthand how the communities are not being able to, the relationships between the police and communities is strained, as we know, for various reasons. And he thought, well, maybe there's a software solution to this, but how the heck do I do that? So he went to Open University and taught himself how to code, as well as working 50, 60 hours a week, risking his life on the streets. So what he's gone and done is, he's proven to us that this guy has got the hustle and the fire to be able to go out and do something which he's never thought possible. We funded this deal last year. We were the lead investor. When I say lead investor, that means we set the terms and the entrepreneur takes our terms. And then all investors that come after us accept our terms as well. That's normally quite difficult. The advantage of this deal is that we led it and Google came in behind us. They wrote a check 10 times as big as ours and never seen them since, but no. They're fine. They're a sleeping giant. So this is Rahul. This is why we invested in him. Another gentleman that we invested in is Andrew Shadlowski. Andrew is based in Santa Barbara. He is an ex-professional fire spinner and juggler, and he's also a weightlifter. Now, a few years ago, he built a supplements e-commerce company, shipping out muscle-building supplements to people. Sadly, someone hacked into his system and caused his business to collapse. Crushed. This is a guy, in his mid-30s, and he was, pretty hurt by that. But picked himself back up, and about 4 years ago, he pitched myself and my co-founder, when we were angel investors, another idea that we didn't like. We didn't invest in it, but we liked him, we liked his hustle, we liked how he worked. So we stayed in touch with him. And then last year, he comes to us and says this. So I built this company on 50 grand of capital, and we've just hit $750,000 of revenue. We were like, okay, we're interested. This is a very good statistic. We meant to meet him, and we funded the company within 11 days. So this guy knows how to pick himself back up again. Failure is something you're going to have to embrace. I love it when I fail. Not when I fail, but when I look back on it. I think that's an awesome way of failing. But you need to embrace that as an entrepreneur and as a student. But what it also shows is that we as VCs, just because we say no now, and this is not the right time, we always want to stay in touch with you. A good venture capitalist, someone that you should be taking money from, should be saying, hey, keep me on your email distribution list. Keep sending me updates. How's your business going? Yeah. So look for that kind of thing, because had we not done that, we would not have done this. And Andrew, incidentally, is now raising his Series A, and he's hit just under $3 million in revenue. This is a unicorn in the making here, and we're so lucky to have done that. Just to kind of summarize the why you kind of piece, and this is a story about sailing. I'm really interested in sailing, and Larry Ellison, for all of his ego and his bad teeth and awful hair, and billions of dollars in the bank, he also wanted to set out to do a challenge, which was to win the America's Cup. He built a trimaran. Now, being a tech entrepreneur, he loaded it with data scientists. He was basically saying, do you know what? If I predict this route using this algorithm, we're going to get there first before anybody else. They lost the first 6 races. The skipper, who's a gentleman that I met at a conference not so long ago, said on that 6th race, he's like, okay, screw this. We're going to do something different. So he fired every single data scientist, every single nerd on that boat, and just relied upon his gut feel, the wind, and what he felt was right. And he won, and they then set the record for the America's Cup. So it's about the skipper, it's about the person. That's who we're investing in, not all these data scientists. Another question that goes into that first bucket is why now? Why is now the right time for your company to exist? This is a really critical and probably the hardest question that we have to answer. And the question of why now and the answers that we look for materialize in a couple of ways. The first one is this technology. We like to invest in companies that technology has only just been invented. So we like machine learning. We like drones. Drones have only recently reached some sort of proliferation in the market. But this is an important thing if you're building a pitch deck and you're trying to present it to investors. This is something we want to see. Like, why is it built today? Not 6 months ago, not 3 months ago. Why today? We like customers who need this product right now. And I'm going to give you some examples of why that is and some really cool ones. But we want something that customers are migrating towards. And then something that used to be expensive but has become cheap. Now, silicon, think about drones, think about cloud computing. It was used to be really, really expensive, and now it's super cheap. I mean, Amazon Web Services, it's like, how much is it per month? A couple $100. So we like things that have started to become a bit cheaper. These are things that fail this question every time, and we see this a lot. Sorry to anyone who's building an app. Who's building an app? Okay, nothing wrong with it. But the App Store launched in 2008, maybe 2008. That's already 10 years old. I do not believe there's any more innovation that you can get from the screen of a smartphone. Pinch, swipe, swipe right, swipe left. I think that's kind of it. There's also 2.4 million apps in the App Store. So, I mean, how many of you kind of regularly go to the App Store and just like browse for new apps? Yep. So, finding a new app is, I would think, impossible. So, for those of you building a consumer app in particular, how are you going to do that? I take my hat off to you. Overfunded sector. How many of you have seen those annoying bird scooters hanging around? Yeah, exactly. So Bird has just raised, I think they're at a $2 billion valuation. They've launched in a handful of cities, and every single time they get kicked out and banned. The scooters break down, they create noise, litter on the streets. But this is a company that some of the best venture funds have jumped on. I personally think this is a ticking time bomb of like money wastage right here. We don't like overfunded sectors. Companies that are overcapitalized get lazy and then make bad decisions. We like companies and markets that are thrifty. And consumers that don't have the ability to purchase. So one of the favorite things I like to troll on Twitter about is virtual reality. When we first started Stage, I was very keen on VR. I thought there was something in this. There was a lot of investment going into it. I saw 168 VR companies in my first year. We invested in one. That was Pi, sold to Snap. And the rest we couldn't do. The main reason is that for you to run one of these devices that makes VR somewhat non-sick, if that's such a word, non-nauseous, you have to have a $1,000, $2,000 PC. And then you have to have a living room that can support these sensors, which is probably 12 foot square. For those of you who've been to New York and seen apartments there, I don't know many apartments with a 12 foot square living room. So, and VR has died a death. I mean, it's the only last saving grace for VR is Magic Leap, which I still think is going to be a big flop too. So, I'm very honest. But I'm sorry if any of you are building VR companies. Well, that's my thought. Stunning for you students. I won't go into it now because it's a little dry, but I really want you to read something called the Perez cycle. We like to invest into companies. I'm not sure if there's a laser on this thing. I don't think there is. We like to invest into companies in the deployment period. Conveniently, it's called the Golden Age. I would suggest that you buy this book, Technological Revolutions of Financial Capital. It will teach you a lot about when to launch a business. I won't go into it now, as much as I'd like to. So, let's give you some examples of why now, and some examples of why we said yes. How many of you remember last month the president of Venezuela being attacked by drones? Yep, that was a watershed moment for our portfolio company. I mean, he's not the nicest guy in the world, to be fair, but but this is what happened. So we met a guy, Luke, in San Luis Obispo. Luke actually's got an amazing story. He grew up in foster care. He suffered at the hands of some family members, and he hustled his way around. He built his first $1 million revenue business when he was 16, and he built his own drones from scrap in the scrap yards, and he used those in Sequoia National Forest to assess the health of redwood trees right at the very top. Weird story, but he decided that what he did was he built something, a universal remote. Now most drones have different remotes, right? You buy a DJI drone, you buy a Parrot drone, you buy the awful GoPro thing. They've all got different remotes. So it's a bit like having back in the old days when like TVs had all multiple different remotes that you can never use. So he had the idea of, why don't I create a universal remote for drones so I can have one remote that will control any drone on this planet. At the age of 18, while at Cal Poly and not studying, he did it, and it worked. While he did it, because he was talking about it, the FBI came to meet him at school. And they were like, so what's this? And this is so weird that they actually, I can't believe it. He must have been absolutely crapping himself when they turned up. But they came there, and then it gave him the inspiration to say, okay, well, how about I stop using this thing for fun and for hacking into people's drones? How about we do some good with this? So he built White Fox, and that is that white dome there. And what that does is that stops any drone flying into any particular area. This projects a 4-kilometer wide invisible net. If that drone flies into that space, it issues 3 commands. Depending upon the nature of the drone, the speed it's flying at, the weight that it has, it's looking likely to be carrying, It can issue the first command, which is just drop it out of the sky, crush it, who cares. The second one is land it on a property that it shouldn't be, and then confiscate it. Or the third one, which is actually most exciting, is let's send it back to the pilot and land it back at its feet. Can't tell you too much about Luke's customers because most of them are in the defense space. But incidentally, one of the people they're fighting every day is ISIS. Now, ISIS actually uses a drone you can buy in Best Buy for $600. It can carry 4 pounds of C4, and I've seen videos of that drone dropping a package of C4 into schools and into weapons munitions and destroying the entire thing. So Luke also protects nuclear power stations, and his biggest new customer is the California penitentiary system. There's never a reason like answers better why now than White Fox. When they were setting up the drone, it takes 50 minutes to set this device up. During that time, 2 drones flew over the wall of a certain prison not far from here, and during that time dropped off 2 items of contraband. One was a cell phone. Cell phone in prison sells for $4,000, and the other one was a knife. During that time, somebody used that knife, stabbed somebody, and cost us as taxpayers $250,000 to medevac that guy out from the prison. So Luke's product works, and is just not a better explanation of why now for us. The technology is amazing, and we're very lucky to have met him when we did. Another company we invested in initially pitched us on what they did for Hurricane Harvey. As you know, that was pretty disastrous, and whether you believe in it or not, weather's getting worse in this country and around the world. So we met a company through Techstars, which is a very famous accelerator and incubator that you should all know. We love those guys. And they were a company called Slingshot. Now, Slingshot was founded by a ex-Air Force intelligence major, a lady called Melanie Strickland. And she's got the highest level of security clearance within the Air Force. And every time I ask her, like, can you tell me about UFOs? She just, like, smiles at me and just says, you can never imagine. But what she did pitch us was Slingshot. Now, Slingshot uses something called hyperspectral imagery, which is a quality and depth of imagery that is 228 times sharper than RGB, which is what we see through our eyes natively. What it does do is it picks up imagery that you've never seen before from space. This actually is data projected from small, low Earth orbit satellites, the ones that are taken up by SpaceX. They're about the size of a drone, and there are thousands of them floating around in the sky as basically space litter. But they do produce great imagery. They were commissioned by the governor of Texas to help the emergency relief within Hurricane Harvey. The biggest challenge they had was that they couldn't see where there were areas of low-lying water. Water from satellites is really hard to see because it's reflecting light, right? So you don't really know where it is. Slingshot, because they have developed technology that is using hyperspectral imagery that's never been done before, they were able to pinpoint all these red areas or big areas of low-lying water, and they gave this data to the emergency response team so that they could try and get to those areas quicker and also avoid roadblocks. Again, not another better explanation for why now. The last question on that bucket is why us? And this isn't really a question for me to answer, this is a question for you to answer. And you have to remember that when we invest in you, this is probably going to be a 10-year relationship. This is a bit like a marriage. So you have to make sure that we're the right check for you. And some of the questions you should be asking, if you're an entrepreneur, is, do I actually understand this market? You come and pitch me come and pitch me a life science company. I'm not going to be any good for you, and I'm going to say no straight away. But this is part of your job, is to ask these questions. The other big thing that VCs do that people don't talk about enough is that we help your companies grow a lot. Through our world, through our network, through the people we know, we've built a network that can get you to pretty much anywhere. I've got Luke into the LAPD, my co-founder, has helped people get into SpaceX. It's these types of things that we can do for you as a company, but you have to make sure that the VC that you're pitching or the angel investor can also help you. And then, your co-investors, you might have people that invested in you before me that you love. Some of those people we might not like. So you've got to make sure your investors get along and this is like I said, this is a long-term relationship. Something to consider if you want to think about it is that, just because we know a sector, it doesn't mean that we're the best investor for you. A lot of entrepreneurs look through our portfolio, look through my Twitter feed, look through our journals that we write and see that he likes gaming. And they always come to me and say, hey, I've got this new gaming title, love for you to invest in it. Sadly, I can't do that. So try and look for areas where perhaps they might have already done enough bets in that space or just not invested in yet. Here's another cool thing that a lot of people don't expect entrepreneurs and for VCs to deliver for them, but we've got 52 investors in our venture fund. Some of them are really significant individuals that have done amazing things for this planet, and they can all help your companies grow because they have a vested interest in you. No entrepreneur has ever asked me about, can my LPs help our company grow? If you're going out there raising money from venture funds, ask them that question. It's really, really important. And also, pretty much every single round that we invest in, we bring other venture funds that we like that share the same beliefs as us into that round as well. So these are the things you should be thinking about. And when you're choosing an investor, these are the questions I believe you should be asking. So we've spoken about 10,000 feet. Now we're going to talk about 10 feet. And this is really the meat and potatoes of when we invest into someone. The biggest question is, can you hire? Now, how many of you think hiring talent for your startup is going to be easy? Good, because it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. For our third fund, which we're starting now, we're hiring 2 full-time recruiters just to help our portfolio companies hire the talent they need. And when you think about a data scientist, right, they're the most sought-after talent within the tech community. They typically charge somewhere between $250 to up to $3 million a year, and they are the rock stars of our industry. Finding them, convincing them to leave, and then to join your company is really, really hard. So what we look for are individuals that can do that. Our entrepreneurs, of those 180 jobs, most of them are engineers, data scientists, a lot of salespeople, a lot of operations. But here's where it gets really exciting, and here's why we invest in people, is because most of them have been stolen from these Muppets, which is great. I love taking people from SpaceX, particularly now that Elon's doing this meltdown on Twitter. Same with like Northrop Grumman and Google. Yes, they pay great, but they're not very inspiring places to work. And you don't own any equity really in those companies. So we look for people that can hire. Another thing we look for are companies that can ship. So I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who have spent a long time building a product. They may have spent 2 or 3 years building some software, and then they finally get it ready for market. And by that time, their product's already obsolete, or it's been done by somebody else. Bad idea. Ryan is a guy that we met. He actually, when we met him, he was a lawyer, and he had a crazy idea that he was getting really upset with booking corporate travel through his software provider. He thought, this sucks, takes ages, I hate doing it. And he had the idea of building a different travel search engine. So he had he went to 500 startups, which is another one of these incubator type outfits. And he came out at the end of it, and his product was called Wherefore at the time. And what it was it gave it was a consumer technology. It gave consumers the chance to use 2 data points to find the very best holiday for them. And what they chose was you put in your budget and where you live. Once you do that, it brings up a whole list of destinations that you can go to, and you book it. So he launched straight out of 500 startups with that idea. And then he had 1 million people in 7 days run quotes through his platform. Now, in that current platform, the consumer one, we would never have invested in that. But one of those 1 million people happened to be the corporate director of travel for Walmart. And Walmart gave Ryan $750,000 of non-equity owning capital to build a business version of his software product. And we invested just before they did that, which was really cool. We got in super early. We were the only VC fund in that deal. The other investors were a celebrity skateboarder, a boxing promoter, and a pedantic lawyer. Apologies to the lawyers in the room. But if you can imagine what the board meetings were like between those lot, it was the most stressful time of my life. So many F-bombs. But I think at one point we had the boxing promoter threaten to punch me in the face, which was really the pinnacle of my career. It's happened many times since. But anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is that he shipped a product changed it, pivoted it, got free money to build another version, and now he is deploying to 2.2 million Walmart employees. Walmart is the biggest company in the world and the biggest employer in the world. So he shipped. Very important. And then can you sell? I mean, if you can sell your company to investors, then you should be able to sell your company to customers. These are some of the customers that my portfolio sell to. We love them all, especially Marvel. But you've got to be able to prove that you can hire, you can ship a product when it's ready, and that you can sell the damn thing. Those are the three most key questions that we ask. And finally, you know, how do you join our family? I mean, this is one of our portfolio companies. So how do you start to get in touch with VC funds, particularly those of you who are entrepreneurs and wanting to talk to VC funds? If you're brand new and you've not even done this yet, you've got to create a deck that very clearly outlines what your company is and how it works. Get your finances in order. And if you've got a messy cap table, for those of you who don't know what a cap table is, that is how the equity of your company is divided up amongst your investors. Typically, most cap tables should be very brief and have like 3 or 4 people on it. I've seen one cap table with 88 members on it, and that was an instant no. So get your cap table really tight. The third one, which not enough of entrepreneurs do, is write content. The way we find you is by you writing great Medium posts, getting stuff published, being on Twitter and being really thought-provoking. Yeah, write content. In terms of your favorite investors and how you want to follow them and how you want to engage with them, yeah, I'm on Twitter and I tweet like 5 times a day. My co-founder tweets like 11 times a day when he should be working. But yeah, he's often like making some political comment. But yeah, follow us, read what we like. You'll see that what we like moan about on Twitter is what we either need more data on or don't like. So try and connect with us a little bit. Also on LinkedIn, we love getting requests from people. If you are an entrepreneur, please do not use LinkedIn in mail. It's like the cheapest, cheesiest way to try and reach out to an entrepreneur, to an investor. The way in which you reach out to investors is through coming to events like this, for you getting referrals from other people in our industry that we admire, lawyers, accountants, people like that. Not by doing cold calling or sending me a MailChimp campaign. That's never going to work. And then look, have fun doing it. This can be a very disheartening process for you raising money, and even for me raising venture capital. This was hard. For me to raise my second fund, I pitched over 500 investors. 50 of them said yes. Most of them said yes in the last 3 months of us raising our fund, because they wanted to watch us and see how we were doing. That's pretty disheartening, you know. But we did it. So don't give up. Keep trying to do this. Keep thinking about those 3 things, and then good to go. So, any questions? Do we have time for questions? Oh, yeah. God, it's a bit chilly in here, isn't it? Yeah. That's fine. That's all right. I'm British. I can handle it. Yeah. Yes. Good. The favorite part is spending time with entrepreneurs and hearing their pitches and hearing their passion for what they do, and just, you know, engaging with really smart people doing cool things. It's like the most infectious thing in the world. I do have the best job in the world. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not Shark Tank. That's total BS. This is the cutting edge of technology. I love being on that point. Thing I don't like is doing the admin. I have to run a financial institution at the end of the day. I have to send out quarterly statements. I have to do all that kind of jazz. So yeah, I'd much rather be out there being an entrepreneur. Yes.
Check.
Dollar amount. Success rate, well, we've had 1 exit. We've had 5 markups this year, so the fund is kind of tracking at a rate that I'll tell you offline, not when I've got a microphone on at the moment.
Check.
It's doing well. We're happy. Our investors are happy. I think we'll a good venture fund returns about 3 to 4 times their invested capital. So we hope to hit that, which is nice. Still too early yet, though. Last question? Okay. Oh, yeah. We typically write $250,000 check for the first check. We then reserve another $750,000 throughout the period between the seed and the Series A. So we like to do bridge rounds. You know, we may invest in the Series A, but we're a seed stage fund. Yeah.
I saw that you invested in Israel, but are you reluctant to invest in international companies in general, or no?
Not at all. No.
Not at all.
I think that there is a culture in other countries that engenders great entrepreneurial results. The challenges around it are that the taxation for US founded fund investing into foreign companies in foreign countries can create multiple taxable events for our investors and for ourselves, which is a challenge. But we've just creating an offshore fund so that we can do that easily and not have those issues. So no, we have no boundaries, nothing at all. In fact, I welcome foreign entrepreneurs. I've done 2 trips going out to foreign markets to find deals in that space. One of them England. Yeah.
Could you speak up? Yeah. Yeah. I remember you talking about loving failures. So could you explain to us a VC investment where it has failed and just one that you didn't like and just wanted to kind of pull your hair?
Yeah. Well, there's one deal that we didn't do that did fail, which I'm quite happy about. That was MoviePass. I was presenting MoviePass, and I was like, "Oh man, I really want to do this deal. I would pay $10 or whatever it is per month to get free movies." I met the founder, and I realized he was a little bit of a challenge, so we didn't do that deal. In terms of a deal that did fail, we, as angel investors, invested in a company that was doing something using LiDAR technology, which is light emitting radar. It bounces light off surfaces to create 3D objects. Very, very cool stuff. But I was the only investor that, this is not me being arrogant, I was the only investor that got it. Nobody else invested alongside me, and the company went under because it couldn't raise enough money. So yeah, I was gutted about that, but I still felt like I backed a great entrepreneur. The idea was cool, but yeah, it still hurts. Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up. Thanks for letting me bring it up. Yeah, cheers. Yeah.
I was wondering, at what point, as an entrepreneur, should you be looking into getting venture capital? Should it be, while you're just having an idea, or should you have already funded it yourself, have made some revenue? When? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it depends on the stage of the venture fund. So the venture community and the venture, market has changed. There used to be seed funds, then Series A, Series B, Series C. Now you've got, and typically a seed deal back then was when a company was very little revenue, couple of customers, just growing a little bit. Now a seed stage deal is when a company is doing anywhere from $500,000 to $3 million in revenue. Have got 8 or 9 employees, lots of customers. So there are other funds that now exist called pre-seed funds, and they invest when you're just an idea, maybe a little prototype that works, and they can come in. So you can reach out to people pretty early on in your product life cycle, but you have to remember that the check is smaller. They'll probably take more of your company, and it's still hard to raise it. So I think the best time to do it is if you can seed it yourself, just a little bit, or with some family and friends. Family and friends round is a very good opportunity for you to raise capital. If you can get a little bit of traction, some customers, some paid pilots, if someone is willing to pay for your product, and you can then go off and raise capital off the back of that. That's a sign, that stamp of approval for me.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
So you said you studied economics and then you went to Lloyd's after that. Do you think those early experiences suited you, or organically led you to venture capital, or did you learn more from, or did you feel out of place when you started doing venture capital?
I felt out of place being an employee. I've always been a terrible employee, never listening to anybody. So yeah, I think my degree certainly taught me to look at things in a very different way. I think economics is like a beautiful form of math. I really enjoy reading it, and I love learning about different concepts in that way. But the real thing that got me going was building that startup at Lloyd's. It just told me about how to build a product, how to sell it, how to convince. The hardest thing for me to get that company going within the bank was convincing internal people to want to do this. I spent months trying to convince these people who have been there for 20, 30 years that this is the future, and most of them told me to get stuffed. So I got used to like failure in that way.
Similar questions. What kind of qualities do you think would be a good candidate to be the venture capitalist?
What qualities would make a good candidate? You mean applying for a job within a venture capital firm? Yeah, I think people who've made some investments, even if it's only 5 or 10 grand or something like that, I think that proves that you're willing to put your own money into something that you believe. I think if you've built a company before and it's been successful, or it's failed, but it's failed in a way that you've learned from, or that you can, encourage other entrepreneurs to learn from, great qualities. I think having some knowledge of like money and how this works. I mean, venture capital, believe it or not, is not a very regulated space. We don't have that many compliance checks. I've come from a very regulated space, so it helps me with understanding about how to take risk, because venture capital at the purest level is all about taking risk and how you mitigate risk using homework and using research and using due diligence. So there are many different qualities, but ultimately the best one is if you've been an entrepreneur or you've been an investor and you've done really well at it, you're a great VC. One of my good friends is the founder of Postmates, probably a company many of you know. He now works at a fund called Untitled Capital in San Francisco, and he's the finest VC I know, and he's British. Yeah, cheers.
How hands-on are you with your companies you invest in, and then what kind of value add above the money do you add to those businesses?
Great question. We're very involved. We won't invest if we can't be involved. Some of the things that we've done, one of our companies is a company called Ventana, which is based here it's based in Van Nuys. They build interactive holograms, and they sell to the NFL and to hotels and all this kind of stuff. One of the big challenges they had was hiring a chief technical officer that knew about holograms. There's probably like 10 of them on the planet. Conveniently, one of my best friends is the head of recruitment for Verizon, and he was like, hey, I've got this guy applied for a job here. This is such a serendipitous moment. And he's like, he worked at some bloody agency doing holograms. And I'm like, I'll take that. So he became the CTO of our company because of our connections. I've helped our founders transition out co-founders who weren't doing very well. That's a really tough thing to do. It's not a very easy thing to do. Firing a founder of a company is something that you never want to have to do if you don't have to. But I've had to get involved with that, using some good family HR knowledge. And then, sales, business development. Like, we get involved with recruiting as well. I love going out there pitching our companies. I basically carry like a big jacket with all of our logos in it. And I'll just pitch. I'll pitch every company I know on our portfolio, because that's what makes my job fun.
What,
Yes, sir.
what should I major in for the big money these days?
What should you major in? Boy, I don't think
You
it really.
said there were high-priced jobs.
Well, you mean in data science? Yeah, well, you should all be studying how to code. For those of you students here and you don't know how to code, that's just like, forget learning French, sorry. Learn how to bloody do Python. That is so much more important than anything else. I think having some sort of entrepreneurial minor or major is really helpful. Business management is good. Economics is strong. Finance. It depends on what you're building. Yeah.
In terms of meeting investors, you recommended the two ways to do what you said are to get warm intros or to go to events like this and meet them in person. What would you recommend is the best way to follow up and get those the meetings one-on-one where you can actually pitch to them?
Good. Well, I mean, for you to get those meetings first, like I said, I still think the best way to do it is through the people that are helping you build your business, your accountants, your lawyers, right? Because we have them as friends and they'll always send us good deals. So yeah, I would try and reach out through your network to get a warm intro. That's probably the best way. Once you get that intro and you then have to turn that into a meeting, that's where you just need to be really precise and really brief. And basically just say, hey, this is me. This is why now, and why I want your money. And once you've done that, then that makes the intro much more interesting for us. I had an entrepreneur pitch me at 6 a.m. this morning, 7 a.m. Sorry. He was in Tel Aviv, so I took one for the team. He didn't send me a pitch deck. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know. He was then trying to articulate what this thing was. And I'm like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, yeah, try and always send something, not too much, just a little bite size for us to get around to it. Because ultimately, I want to say yes or no to you as fast as possible. Not because I want to, because I'm, whatever, I'm not an arrogant kind of dude, but I want to do that so you can get on and speak to somebody who actually might be interested in your company. So if you can give us just enough information for us to make a decision quickly, that's really helpful. And be prepared not for a face-to-face meeting. The first meeting we normally take now is a phone call. It's a 30-minute phone call, preferably Skype or Google Hangouts. Try not to do it from your bedroom. I've seen lots of I've done lots of pictures from someone's bedroom before, which is kind of weird. So yeah, try and find a place at WeWork or library or something like that. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure if it does.
Yeah, you talked about the entrepreneurship program at Gardena High School.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's any things you learned from that, and also if it compares to any of the coaching that you give to entrepreneurs that you're dealing with one-on-one.
Yeah, it's a great question. Absolutely. Yeah, it was all about, I suppose what I learned from it was about trying to inspire people by being creative and how you deliver a message. They were studying sessions on geography, and one of the curriculum items was just in time, Kaizen, which is a Japanese method of manufacturing just in time. Trying to get some kids who are 16 to be excited by that is really hard. So one of my friends happens to run the UPS depot in Carson, and I brought him out to school, and then we brought the kids to the depot to see how things are so process driven and how 1 second out screws this up all the way down the other end. So trying to bring creativity was really important to me, and bringing real life examples, and that really led me into how I spoke today, which is I hopefully told you a story, which is far more interesting than just giving you a lecture.
So a quick question: is SVP still seeking for additional money for fund?
Who? Sorry.
Is SVP? I guess your company.
Yes.
Still seeking more fund.
Very good question. We are not right now. We've just closed our second fund, which I can tell you is a marathon of a journey. So we're taking 3 months off, but we'll be raising again for a third one, which is our $100 million fund. That will be in March. So love to have a chat.
Okay, we're going to have a question here and then one more question after that.
Hi. So as a high school student, I'm obviously really limited in experience opportunities, but at the same time, I can gain really valuable information at this time in my life. So what do you think is the best way for someone that's interested in the financial industry to get work experience?
Within venture capital or to be an entrepreneur?
Venture capital.
Do you have I'm not sure, in the UK we have young entrepreneurs program where you get to build your own little business and you test it out. Yeah, try and do something like that. If you look on the cover of Fortune magazine, I think there's a 13-year-old on the cover of that. She's built a company. I think you can start right now, mate. Yeah, start right now. Come up with a cool idea, try and sell it. Maybe write some content. Maybe write an essay on why you think this sector in the future is going to be interesting. That should be quite cool. Think about space travel. Think about what it would mean when you got quadcopters dropping you off in Los Angeles. Think about the future and maybe write something on that. That would be really fun. And maybe send it to me, and maybe we can publish it on our Twitter feed or something like that. That would be really cool. And happy to help in any way, because it's important to help you become what you want to be. Yeah.
So obviously financials are very important, but knowing how financial projections always change as the company evolves, how accurate should we be when we present to investors? Or do we need to hire a financial analyst to really have the exacts, or as exact as we can, or?
That's my favorite question.
Okay, good.
And that's because 5-year financials are a complete work of fiction. I mean, it means nothing. If I put my finances 5 years ago and look at them today, they look very, very different. So how your business is going to be in 5 years' time from a financial perspective is absolutely nonsense. So don't waste the time or the money on doing it with an accountant. The best thing you can do is to say, okay, I'm raising $1.5 million. It's going to last me 18 months, and here's how I'm going to spend it. Here's who I'm going to hire. This is how much they're going to cost. This is how much I'm going to spend on sales and marketing. This is what I'm going to spend on engineering and product development. So break that down. That's much more relevant to us and much more realistic. The rest of it is just a waste of time.
Let's give Rob a round of applause. Thank you very much.